Welcome to Secrets of the Stars, where we explore the ancient knowledge of astrology, decode your unique blueprint, and unveil how the wisdom of the sky contributes to your life. I'm your host, Abby Lutis, astrologer, mentor, and sky guide. It's time to embark on a cosmic adventure of self-discovery and understanding why you are the way you are. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to Secrets of the Stars, episode 7. I can hardly believe we are already at episode 7. It really only just felt like yesterday that I launched this podcast, so I'm truly thrilled to be here. I hope you guys are having an incredible week. I know that I certainly am. We are now getting past the sticky energy that was the start of Sagittarius season and the Gemini full moon, and we're headed through the rest of the week, forging to the weekend. Reflecting back, my last weekend was really incredible. I went to an incredible women's circle up near Noosa, and I really made some new connections and had just a really, really beautiful morning. I haven't actually been to many women's circles, and Hannah, who was the host of this one, was just such an incredible woman, and her ability to hold space for other women was just so powerful, and it really was truly magical. So I'm actually coming to the end of a house sit that I've been doing, and I'm going to be switching over to doing another one. So I'm going to be changing locations. I have been doing some fitness classes, some spin bike classes. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen me struggling and feeling challenged to get in the rhythm with things, but I'm really finding my feet there, finding my legs, I suppose you could say. And you've probably heard me talk about my Astrology of 2024 class. It's coming up on the 4th of December, and I'm so excited. It's just 5 days away. So if you're wanting to get a seat in the class, head on over to the show links and you'll be able to find your pass to come to the Astrology of 2024. I'm really going to be showing in this one-off class all the astrological energies that are going to be around in 2024. I'm going to step you through all the events that are happening, and I'm going to teach you how to apply this astrology to your own life in a very personal way, because not all astrology is impacting us all the time. So I'll teach you the steps to understand what astrology is going to be impacting you in 2024. Today, I'm going to be talking about forecasting in astrology, and I thought it would be really interesting to interview one of my clients who has just had a forecasting reading with me. So today, I'm talking to Krystal Wilson, and Krystal is also my mentor. I have been working with her on and off for around 4 years, and before we get into this podcast, I want to talk about the importance of mentorship, coaching, investing in yourself, and personal growth, because this is something I've always been interested in. I have used to be an athlete, and so getting the edge through using your mind has always been something that's intriguing for me. And it was in 2008 and 2009 when I thought I'd come to the end of the road with a lot of things in my life. I thought I had done everything I wanted to do. I really couldn't see what was next. And so I started seeing a life coach for my life outside of sports. And it's so important. What I've learned from this experience is that it is so important to have someone in your corner, someone to keep you accountable, and someone who resonates with you and that you're able to completely connect with and be honest and open and be 100% seen. It was around 2019 when I first found Krystal on Instagram. I was going through a rough patch, and after some months, I signed up for her breakthrough program. I knew I was going to have to reveal it all so that I could level up for myself and really step into the person that I wanted to be. And I really did that. And over the past 4 or 5 years, I've seen the results unfold. It hasn't all rushed in at once, and I wouldn't say it's finished. I still have those times of challenge, but I keep coming back to my mindset and myself. And Krystal has really shown me how to do that. Anyway, so without further ado, Krystal Wilson, welcome to Secrets of the Stars podcast. You are my very first podcast guest. You're also a breakthrough coach, a business mentor, an NLP practitioner, and hypnotherapist. Welcome.
Oh my God, Abby, what a beautiful intro. And what an honor to be your first guest. I feel like it couldn't have been any other way, right?
I know. So today we're going to be talking about astrology and forecasting in astrology. So I guess I wanted to start with a little bit of a astrology question, and that is, how much did you really know about astrology before we did our session together?
Oh, not a lot. A little bit, like a little bit over the years, I've definitely picked up about astrology. I would actually say that in 2018, I'd done my practitioner level of NLP, and I was doing my master, which was like a 14-day intensive accreditation. And I was sharing a room with a girl, and she was into astrology big time. And she taught me about, you've got your sun sign, which I knew I was a Pisces,
Yeah.
but she was like, do you know about your rising and ascending and moon sign? I was like, no. And in the room, like late one night after doing like a 15-hour day of training, she was like teaching me about my sun, moon, and rising. And that
Oh,
was my big kind of entry into like, oh, there's something other than just being a Pisces.
yeah.
And that was fascinating because she taught me that I was a double Sagittarius. And I'll never forget, she said, oh my God, Krystal, like knowing you and learning that you are a Pisces double Sag. She goes, nothing more has ever been more true about anybody and their personality and like how you show up in the world, because you definitely show up in the world as a crazy Sagittarius. And I was like, that I'll take it.
Wow, that's so interesting. And yeah, I think we call it pop astrology, where we know what our sun sign is, or it's called the star sign. But I think now it's becoming even more common for people to know their big three. There's so many memes and information flying around on Instagram that, if we know our big three, we can sort of have a look and see what our moon sign's doing, or see what our rising sign is. And I think people just know a little bit more about astrology these days.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's what I learned about astrology, which is so fascinating, was that it's not a pop culture thing. It's actually ancient. There's like incredible history, which I actually found really interesting. So even though we're in this like renaissance at the moment of like astrology, it's really interesting how long it's been around.
Oh my gosh. I have a podcast episode to do on history. I'm not normally a history person, but I went down a rabbit hole, and astrology's been around since 3th century BC, or however you say it.
Wow, I
And there's
can't
just
wait to
been,
listen to that episode. That'll be so interesting.
yeah, it was really confirming for me, because people have been using this since before we had computers. And it was really a time when there was only limited things like nature that we could connect to. And people were really using the stars in a real way. They would look up and see where they were and see the correlation between the movements and the events that were happening on Earth. And that's really how the beginning of astrology started. So.
I love it. As you're saying that, just for your listeners, something that I was just thinking about you is how, like, this is so your purpose. You're like knowing you, having known you for 4 years, like, and when you just people looking at the stars and things like that, I was like, oh, Abby, this is like everything you do. There's always this cornerstone of like the universe and astrology and stars. So it's really is like part of like your blueprint. Like this is exactly the path that you were meant to be on, and the work. And it comes very innately and natural to you. Because what you guys don't know is we were just having a chat before we press record, and Abby's just like throwing dates at me, telling me things about my business. It's just so inherently natural for you to talk about this, which I
Yeah.
think is really beautiful, because there was a time in the beginning of our breakthrough work together where you were like, had this idea of like, maybe I want to do astrology. And now look at you, babe. There's the
Yeah.
podcast, there's the business. You're doing readings with me, giving me forecasts. And I'm just so proud of you. This is a little like mentor note. I'm so freaking proud of you. It's amazing. Congrats.
Oh, thank you. Well, I know that you have had astrology readings. Like I knew that you'd had a natal chart reading before or a report that had, and you've probably done a little bit of a deep dive or, a little bit of a dive. But had you ever heard of forecasting in astrology and know that you could use astrology to have readings to get an insight into future energies?
I think that it wasn't something that I had been really exposed to, but I feel like I had heard people talking about, like, I always share this quote about astrology where it's like, like people who are really, really, really successful in business actually use astrology as their guiding on like dates to do things. And I had just seen like a little clip somewhere on the social media when I was like, oh, that just really opened my eyes to like using it for forecasting. But I had never done that. And to be honest with you, I've actually never seen any other astrologer offer that. Like, so whenever I've followed astrologers on Instagram, I definitely see them talk about like getting your soul's blueprint or getting your natal chart reading. And for me, I've had that done. It was really awesome, but I wouldn't like go back and keep getting like my natal chart reading. So
Mm.
what really opened me up about your offer was like I'd never actually seen anyone offer it. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
so therefore it wasn't something that I hadn't seen it. And so that really excited me, because I was
Mm.
like, I think once you get, if you're like me and you're like, I don't really know anything about astrology, but I love self-discovery and I love learning about myself, which I think is like every, millennial woman.
Yeah.
I feel like we get our natal chart and we're like, this is so cool, but we actually don't know, well, what's next from here? Like, do we
Yeah.
just get our horoscopes every month? So the
Yep.
forecasting, my really first exposure to that was you and this beautiful offering that you put together.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting what you said about, in ancient times, astrology was really reserved and was used by royalty. It was the kings and queens. And there's also, US presidents that have had astrologers that are working, behind the scenes, looking at specific dates. And yeah, it's not necessarily out there. And I think potentially, it could be received as hard and fast guidance sometimes by some people. I always say astrology is a tool. There's so many different interpretations you can get from it. Not everything I say is going to resonate with you. And you really have to take and use your inner guide and your intuition and take the messages that resonate with you the most to get the best experience out of the reading.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Now, did you have any expectations of what sort of guidance you might receive through the reading?
No, I don't think so. I think I went in just really open
Mm.
and excited to experience it for the first time. So, kind of
Mm.
getting this like future reading, this forecast reading.
Mm.
What I loved about your offering was that I got to really choose on where I wanted to focus.
Mm.
So I had some expectation that I was going to get information about the areas of my life that you asked me, where do I want my information from, where I want to focus. And so I was just excited about that, because I
Yeah.
got to choose what was important to me over the next 3 months
Yeah.
and where I was going to be focusing my energy to then
Mm.
learn, okay, what are the energies based on
Mm.
astrology over these next 3 months for me?
Yeah, and that sort of leads into my next question because I always like to ask my clients, give me a couple of areas of life that you want insight into, because that way we can narrow down the focus. And it's like what they say when you're reading tarot cards or oracle cards, the better question, the better the question you ask, the better the answer you get. So yeah, I always like to ask people, what area of life are you looking at? Is there any questions that you want to know about? Is there any sort of timeframes that you're looking at? So do you think you got the clarity that you were looking for from the reading?
Yeah, so I wanted to focus on business and fertility. So for those of you who don't know, I've been on a really long fertility journey for about, I think we're going into our 7th year, but we've had a couple of years break, 18 months break, and we're about to ramp that back up again. So I was just kind of knowing that we were, kind of starting fertility again. I just wanted to see what was showing in the energies, in the stars over the next kind of 3 months. And then in terms of my business, I've been in this really kind of like interesting like transition period. I've been doing a huge rebrand. I've been kind of really finding that next level or evolution of my business. And so I really just wanted to see what was kind of showing up in business for me over the next 3 months as well. And so in terms of clarity, it was very interesting because I've been to a lot of psychics. So I've gone and had like psychic readings, and I actually found it similar to that, in the sense that often when I've gone to a psychic or someone intuitive and had a reading, that it's almost like it's a comfort thing. It's like, oh, you get validated in
Yes.
how you're feeling. So a lot of the things that you said, one of the things that you really, and I listened again this morning before we recorded, it was like, it's okay to rest. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
even though I've got all these big goals in business, there was this moment in the beginning where like, you're in this point where it's like, it is important for you to rest and like honor your rest right now. And so like getting that little thing is actually really big, because as someone who's like, go, 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 go in business, sometimes when I am feeling like, oh, I want to rest, I have that devil on my shoulder, angel on my shoulder saying, no, you should be pushing harder. You should be working more. So getting that like validation is like, oh, okay, so it's okay that I'm not even though I've got big goals, I'm not in this current season of like, screaming it from the rooftop. So that was cool. So there's lots of little moments like that where I felt really validated and felt like I was on the right path. And so that reminded me of kind of having an intuitive reading.
Yeah, I think it can sometimes help us to like tap back into that, what we actually know. And when like what you were saying with the needing to rest, that's a very clear thing that I can see in natal charts when it's a time for someone to rest. And so it's interesting that you were sort of feeling like this at that particular time. So the fertility piece is also very interesting. A lot of this is derived from medical astrology, which I have studied a little bit of. I'm not super like going on a deep dive yet, but very, very interesting there, and lots of different ways that you can use it as a tool. I always tell people, especially on a fertility journey, you sometimes have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think, yes, you want to, and I think anyone who's been on like a long fertility journey like me, it's awesome. It was very cool and insightful and comforting to kind of get dates and things that I could be looking out for. And like, so you were able to show me like, wow, there's some really powerful dates here that you should look at. And that was really cool. And then then kind of like overlaying that over my own actual cycle was really cool. But again, I love what you're taking. I think anyone who's actually been on a longer fertility journey takes everything with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
you have to protect yourself. But I went in with an open mind, an open heart, and just ready to receive. But I also know that what will be will be.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was the biggest insight or aha that you had from having the forecast reading?
I honestly think it was that piece around feeling validated. There was not like this like one defining thing. It was the feeling of how I felt afterwards. I was like, wow, like I'm on the right path, like, because you validated so many things. Do you know what I mean? Like little things you said, or dates or feelings or energies. I was like, wow, this was so insightful. I felt like it was probably the most, in terms of astrology, it was 100% the most powerful reading that I had, because it gave me like, I love that it was a 3-month forecast, because maybe, with a natal chart, it's such a big overview and there's so much information, which is so important to have. Like I loved my natal chart reading, but I don't often go back to that. Like you kind of like, I feel like if you're like someone
Yes.
like me and astrology is like just a fun thing you kind
Yeah.
of dabble in, you get your chart, you're like, that was such a cool experience. I learned XYZ about myself, but you're not often going back to it, or in moments of stuff is happening. It's not like you can go back to that reading and then get like too much insightful
Mm,
information about the current time. So
mm,
I loved the idea of this snapshot of like, okay, let's look at the next 3 months. Let's look
mm,
at the dates, the themes, the things that are happening. So I just
mm,
felt really validated, like I was on the right path and that everything was going to be work out and going to be okay. There were some really powerful dates with the fertility stuff, which was really
mm,
cool.
mm,
And I suppose what I need to do like is really sit down and like map out those dates, because like
mm.
anything, it can
Yeah.
be, unless you apply anything. So like it's like you can get a reading or you could do like breakthrough work with me, unless you integrate it and apply it to your life. So that's what I did this morning. I like wrote down all the dates that I can like really now, okay, let's actually take what I've just learned that felt so cool and let's actually see how I can, then actually apply it.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's something I've been thinking about more and more with astrology is that practical application. Because as you say, it is all well and good to have a chart and understand the energies and get to know yourself even more. But when you use things in a practical way, that's when you really like see, I guess, the magic unfold.
Right. And that's when
Mm,
you look, that quote, that little clip that I've seen so many times about talking about how billionaires use astrology in business. And you're saying like kings and queens, they have used it and they've applied it, right? So they
yes.
allow the astrology to help them make decisions on when they're going to do certain things in their lives. And that's how they are then able to align those energies to get these like really powerful results. So
Mm,
unless you're applying the astrology, you know what I mean?
yeah.
They're kind of like missing the best part about it. So I really set that intention for myself to like, okay, this is my first forecast reading. I loved it. Like I finished the reading, like I loved that. Like I could see myself doing that every 3 months for
Mm,
my, even just in business. Like as someone who's been in business for almost a decade in the online space, it can be lonely. Do you know what I mean?
mm,
Like, and you can get decision fatigue of like, you know what I mean? Like you're always tapping into your intuition, always making decisions. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? And so
mm-hmm.
like having astrology as like an additional piece of guidance to help discern and make decisions, I think is super cool. Like super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, the business piece. We were going to try and get your, the birth chart for your business, which is essentially when it was born, because that can even get, more information from that. So there's just so many angles that you can go down with astrology. And that's what I really love. It satisfies my Aquarius moon brain.
I love it.
Yeah. So, yeah, astrology, it really is. It's a complex language. I really do come at it from what I like to say, like a mathematical standpoint. I'm looking at the chart, I'm reading the angles and the aspects and what planets are doing. And, some of these words that I'm even using now probably don't make sense to a lot of people. But what I try and do is interpret it in layman's terms and give people actual dates that, around this time something could be stronger, or it might be hard to make a decision around this time, or this is a good energy to put a project out in the world or start something with your business. So that's what I really try and do with my forecast reading and in my interpretation of astrology. I I said the other day, like, I had this really interesting moment. I was like, I'm not a medium. I just read the symbology. And then I was like, oh, that's an interesting thought. Maybe there are, bits of intuition that are coming through, because I do have that also dropping in, which I'll add that time and again. But majority of the time, I am really looking at the overlay of your chart, your personal natal chart, with the current energies or the next 3 months energies. That's how I get the information that I can pass on to you.
Love it. Love it.
Mm.
And don't you find that as you do this though, because I would say that you say, well, I'm not a medium. And I would say, but aren't we all? Like,
Yeah.
don't we all have that gift,
Well,
right?
that was what the little download was. That's like, It was almost like, Abby, stop saying you're not a medium. You
Medium.
get
Yeah.
all
I was
these
like,
insights.
how limiting,
Yeah.
Abby.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So maybe it's like, well, maybe I can tap into different energies, and maybe I can, and also like just doing the work you do, you sit and you read people. So you're reading
Mm,
their energy, you're reading their charts. So maybe it is helping you to develop gifts that kind of are laying dormant within you.
absolutely. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
Abby
I
the
think it
medium slash astrologer.
I think everyone does have access to that if they really want to. They can develop, and attune those skills for sure.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think we're all born with those gifts, some stronger than others, and some people disconnect from their gift.
Mm, mm.
And some people rediscover it later in life. I've got clients who've done that. It's very cool.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your experience with astrology and, the reading, the forecast reading that you have had with me. I find it really insightful too, to like listen back and hear people's aha moments and what has landed with them and what it hasn't. And, it also can confirm these revelations. And this tool is really ancient. And, I think that's what I love so much about it. It's not just something that's come about in the last 60 years. It's been around for thousands of years. So just before we finish up, I wanted to ask, is there anything else that you wanted to add about your reading, or anything that you wanted to talk about?
Oh, anything that I want to add? No, just that I am, I followed my intuition, and I was like, I was getting that niggle, that nudge, that call to book
Yeah.
that reading with you. And I'm so glad that I did. And it was so insightful. And I really encourage people to follow their intuition. If you're feeling like you've got things that you'd like a deeper insight into over the next 3 months, and maybe there's actually nothing. You're like, I actually don't have nothing. So that might give you, I think you could do
Yeah.
a forecast from a sense of like, okay, I'm working on something or something's happening, so I want the forecast. Or it could be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing over the next 3 months. Do you know what I mean? Can I
Yeah.
please I need some guidance. So I feel like you could use it with a clear direction of what you wanted information for, or whether you're feeling like a little bit lost and needed to know where your focus should be. So I think it's such an incredibly powerful tool, and I'm definitely going to be doing it again.
Amazing. Well, Krystal, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Now, I want to say to all my listeners, you really want to be following Krystal Wilson on Instagram at I am Krystal Wilson, and her business page at She Who Dares Official, and over in her Facebook group, She Who Dares. It's a really great place, especially if you're looking to continue that work on yourself and always be leveling up and just committing to yourself, I think. So thanks again, Krystal. It's been amazing chatting to you today. I really have enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
So there you have it. I hope you have enjoyed this episode and this interview with Krystal Wilson. And if you want to get a forecast reading or even a natal chart reading, you can head on over to my website, abbylutis.com, and you can find all the links in the show notes as well. And remember, there is only 5 days left to get your seat in my class, The Astrology of 2024. So if you want to prepare yourself for the energies of 2024, come and join me. It's only $33, and the link to join you can find in the show notes. So thanks again for joining me in this episode of Secrets of the Stars. You can find me on Instagram at Stars by Abby, or you can type in Stars by Abby in Facebook and join my Facebook community. And until next time, keep shining bright. Thank you for joining me on this cosmic journey of self-discovery. If you have enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with someone who you think would love it. Keep exploring the secrets of the stars, and remember, the universe has woven a unique story just for you. Until next time, keep shining bright.